The Path Not Taken. G'day to all you lovely people. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathy and today I want to talk about this. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I picked this up because I had watched a few videos by other book YouTubers who mentioned Blake Crouch as a good writer and how much they had enjoyed several of his books. They also mentioned that he wrote Wayward Pines, which was turned into a television series with Matt Dillon. My era. He was very popular in the 80s and I really enjoyed the show. So I thought, if he wrote that, I think I might enjoy his books. So I bought Dark Matter and it's been sitting on my TBR for a while. And on impulse, I picked this up on the weekend and I could not put it down. No, I finished it just a day or so ago and I decided to make this very impulsive video because I wanted to discuss it. I do want to mention a couple of spoilers, so I will split this video into 3, though I think the spoiler section is going to be quite small. Still, if you haven't read it and are intending to read this, I suggest you skip the spoiler part because it might ruin the story for you. Okay. This is, I think, science fiction, thriller, mystery. I also call it speculative fiction. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it seems to me to be kind of speculative. The basic premise is about our main protagonist, Jason, who is a college professor with a family, a loving wife and a teenager son. Apparently, Jason was quite brilliant and could have been very famous in his field, which I think is quantum physics. After visiting a friend who has received a very prestigious award in physics, Jason is kidnapped and drugged. He then wakes up in a world that looks like his but isn't, where certain things differ from his world. For example, he isn't married, his wife isn't his wife, he does not have a son, and nor is he a college professor in this world. In other words, he wakes up into an alternate reality. Now, even though this is science fiction, as a layperson who knows nothing about science, especially quantum physics, this was not over my head. There were a few things which I still don't understand well, but overall, I didn't find this a difficult book to comprehend. And for someone who does not read a lot of science fiction, I found this very accessible, very easy to read, and extremely fast-paced. It felt like I could not stop, like I was on this freight train, and I had to force myself to go to bed at 6 a.m. because I still had quite a bit to go. But regardless, this is an action-packed book, I felt anyway. I also really liked Crouch's writing style. It's very spare. There's few bloated sections, if any actually, and it reminded me a little of Pierce Brown's Red Rising in the style of writing, though it is obviously a different story. It's also written in the first person, so our perspective is Jason's. The plot itself is not original. I have seen films about alternate realities, about the paths not taken, how one decision will lead to another, which means your life will branch into different directions. This is nothing new, and yet I feel like the author did a really good job at making it feel fresh and unpredictable at times. I remember starting this thinking, I know where it's going. I know what is going on here. And then he just throws a spanner in the works and puts everything on its head. And I'm like, okay, this I did not expect. And what more can you ask of a book than that it surprise you? That's what I want. And he surprised me in this. And it left me wondering, racking my brains trying to figure out how this is going to end. And whenever an author surprises me, does the unexpected, or something I could never have predicted, I really enjoy it in a book. Because I never would have thought it would go in the direction that it did. Now, perhaps if you have read a lot of science fiction, you would not have been surprised, but I certainly was. Since we are reading a first-person narrative, obviously our view of this world is based on Jason, but I feel I understood him very well, and I really loved his attachment to his family. I actually was thinking as I was reading this that I think sometimes men write even better romances than women. Not always, of course, but I found this romantic love story very moving at times, very poignant. Some of the other characters aren't fleshed out very much, but you get a rough sketch of them. And that is kind of how the book starts. We get a brief sketch of Jason's family and his life, and then it really does almost immediately plunge into this mystery. I actually like it because that meant it moved along so fast. I kind of felt like I had to catch my breath as I was reading it. If I have any criticisms of this book, it is that some of the more minor characters should have been fleshed out. I don't feel I understood all of them very well, like their motivations, etc. People like Amanda. Charlie could have been fleshed out. Charlie is Jason's son. We got a very brief understanding of this character, though I felt I learnt a lot more by the end of the book. Ultimately, though, this doesn't really detract from the book, because really what it does is leave you thinking about the paths you didn't take in your own life. What ifs? What if I had taken that road instead of this one? What would have happened if I had done this instead of that? Because every decision we make then leads on to another decision, which leads to another branching in our possible futures, in the possibilities. And it also reminded me how much even small, seemingly insignificant decisions can lead to a change, can lead to something unexpected. And not unexpectedly, it also leads you to think about those things that you have regretted. What if I had done this instead of that? For me, any book that makes me contemplate my own life, not just the characters, but also choices I have made. Where would my life have branched off to if I had made that decision and not this one? Any book that makes me think after I've put it down and continue thinking about it, because I still am, and I think I will be for some time, that tells me that I connected to this book, that I connected to some of these issues that this author raised. Red alert! I am now going to very briefly mention a couple of spoilers, and then I'll summarize. So if you don't want to watch the spoilers, skip ahead, and I'll put a timestamp up here somewhere. I wanted to talk about the surprise. When I started this book and Jason was being kidnapped, initially I wondered if it was his friend Ryan. But then we saw Ryan and I thought, well, obviously it's not him. And I started to wonder if it was the alternate Jason, because that's what I assumed reading the blurb on the back, that Jason's life was going to be switched by another Jason from this other reality. And it surprised me. I thought, this is so obvious to me. How is it that our Jason, our protagonist who is telling us this story, wasn't aware of that? It took him half the book, and I thought, but this is so obvious that it's him. So that did surprise me, and I didn't really find it believable that this very smart character, Jason, didn't jump to that conclusion immediately. To be fair to him, however, he was shaking off drugs and wondering if his world was turned upside down, and I guess this is meant to be more realistic, right? Watching science fiction films or any other films or shows where these strange and bizarre things happen, we can suspend our disbelief. But perhaps if it happened to us, if it happened to me, I would react the same way as he did, not believe it, think no, there must be some more rational explanation. So I give him a bit of leeway for that. And throughout this book, I thought, okay, it is going to be a showdown between Jason, our Jason, and Jason 2, as he calls him. And then we come to the box and all these alternate realities. That was one of my absolute favourite parts of this book, because then you get to see the possibilities of our actions, our choices, what it could lead to, how it can completely alter your life. I loved that. That was so good. But what really shocked me was when all these other Jasons popped up. I was like, what? I never, ever expected that. And I still cannot make sense of it. I reread the paragraph, I think, where the author explained it, and it still does not make sense to me how all these Jasons could exist in the same space. That just, I can't figure this out. And it is bothering me that I can't figure it out. Whilst I get how they were created, a decision he made led to a branching in his life, so one went one way, one went the other way. But how did they all end up in our Jason's world? How do we know he even is the real Jason? Because I wondered that as well. I thought, is it possible that he is just an alternate Jason and this isn't really his life? Perhaps another of these Jasons is the real Jason. Who is the real Jason? Is there a real Jason? And when there are so many of you in the one space and time, does it diminish you? So many questions were left unanswered, but I like that. I like that it left me thinking and contemplating and wondering and speculating as to what really went on in this book. Now, of course, because we are reading our Jason's story, I'm glad how the book ended. And I'm glad that it was kind of left open-ended. We don't know if he's got a good life or a bad life. I'm hoping a good one, because he went through hell to get to his family. But I also really liked how here we have identical people. They are exactly the same until they made different choices. One decided to pursue work, the other decided to pursue a family. And then, of course, other decisions would have been made which drew them further and further apart from each other. Because there's no doubt the two Jasons, Jason 2 and our Jason, were quite different. And I really despised Jason 2 because he made the choice not to have a family to pursue his career, but he wanted what he didn't have. He was still not satisfied. That really bothered me about him, so I hated him. I really did. Plus, in addition, he stole our Jason's life. He kept harping at the end about Jason, our Jason, would have liked to have continued with his career, but there was nothing to stop him doing that. As our Jason said, he had visited several worlds where he and Daniela had broken up, where he did pursue his career. Jason too couldn't seem to comprehend that our Jason might have regretted and wondered what if he had made a different choice, but he did not regret his decision. And yet it seems to me that Jason too was just greedy. He made his decision, he was happy with his decision, but he was still not satisfied. He still wanted more. Yeah, I really despised Jason too, and I thought it's typical. You always want what you don't have. You always wonder if you've missed out on something. And I really liked that the author made the two Jason's quite different, that even his family picked up on it, that they weren't quite the same. And I think that goes back to how much our choices, our decisions, our actions shape us. Can you see just how many thoughts this book gave me, which I still haven't worked through, and I think will take me a long time to work through. But I like that. I do like thinking about these kinds of issues. I like to think about it in respect to my own life, let alone to a character. Now let's jump into the summary. I loved this book. I'm not going to say it's the best thing ever written, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I loved how many questions it left me with to think about, to contemplate. I love a book that does that to me, that makes me wonder about my life as well as the characters. And I really loved Crouch's writing. I don't know about you guys, but it is sometimes hard to find authors you really like, that you just want to read everything they've ever written. And sometimes it takes several books before you decide an author is for you, and sometimes it happens almost immediately. And it happened to me. I love this so much that I just want to read everything he's ever written. Now, obviously, I've only ever read one book. Hopefully the others are just as good, but it doesn't matter. I am very excited about finding an author that I'm really enjoying. I am going to read more of his books in the very, very near future, but I want to savor this one before I jump into something else. Because if it leaves me with as many questions as this one had, I want some time to enjoy that. I have no hesitation recommending this book if you like ones that make you think. Think about the choices we make, the paths not taken. Because I think, especially as you get older, you do wonder about that. What would have happened if I had made this choice and not this one? And also, this is a very well-written, very fast-paced book that won't take you long to get through. And don't hesitate if you're not science-oriented, because it really isn't heavy on science. It is definitely not a hard science book. As for a score, part of me wants to give it an 8.5, but I think that might be a little on the high side. So I'm going to give Dark Matter 7.5 out of 10. Thoroughly recommend this book. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope this video makes sense, because it really was completely off the cuff. I just want to talk about this book and some of the issues that it raised. Now, I'd love to hear if you have read Dark Matter, what your thoughts are on it. Or if you haven't, have I inspired you to read it? I am recommending it to everyone that I know who might appreciate this kind of book. And I'm thoroughly looking forward to reading another book by Crouch in the future. Well, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, then you can do the usual. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as it helps my channel to grow. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time. Bye. I want to talk about this.